Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. Today, I was going to talk about Vedic astrology or Jyotish and how we can kind of look at or analyze the success of Simone Biles. If you haven't heard, which is hard to imagine these days, she is a U.S. Olympic gymnast and she's been winning a bunch of medals. And as far as I know, she's the most decorated U.S. gymnast of all time. So she's doing really well. And I thought we look at, why Vedic astrology might suggest that at this time. Okay, so a note beforehand, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support. And you might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. If you're new to Vedic astrology, also known as Jyotish, or my videos, all of my teaching videos on the subject are my concepts playlist. They can be found there. Wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on that subject if you'd like to learn more. And I'm really good. My channel is all about playlists. So if you are looking to learn more, I would look at specific playlists that might be of interest to you. So, for example, I have a planets grahas playlist, a houses bhavas playlist, a yogas planetary combinations playlist. And for this talk, which is kind of interesting, I was kind of inspired to look at her chart. And we're coming into eclipse season in a few weeks. And as we'll see, Simone Biles was born very close to an eclipse. So you might, I have a video on lunar and solar eclipses so you understand what that is and how that's used in interpretation from a Vedic astrology perspective. Also, I would look at Rahu and Ketu because Rahu and Ketu um, create, they kind of create these eclipses. But the other thing is that, especially Rahu is very prominent in Simone Biles' chart, as we'll see. If you like to learn astrology by looking at birth charts, I've analyzed a lot of famous birth charts on the channel. I have a video titled Birth Chart Archive List 2024, where I've listed all the different famous people, famous places, and famous moments in time that I've analyzed, and the video that you can find them in. Because most of them are not one-off videos. Like my monthly videos, I usually am looking at like 3 different birth charts, but you wouldn't know from the title of monthly video that I'm doing that. So anyway, that's a helpful. Hopefully, that's a helpful way for you to find the charts you're looking for that are interesting to you. Um, Again, if you're a newbie, these are some of the videos you might watch in addition to this one to get more out of this talk because it is an interpretation talk and I incorporate a lot of different concepts. So North, South, and East Indian style charts. I also cover Western style charts in that video. Introduction to navigating a birth chart. Introduction to the constellations or Rashis, constellation or Rashi categories, planetary aspects, natural benefic and malefic planets or grahas, Chidra grahas or planets of vulnerability, planetary exaltation, debilitation, or Ucha Nicha, planet retrogression or Vakri, Digbal or directional strength, Karko Bhavanasha or planet breaking house, Nakshatras or lunar mansions, Parivartana Yoga, exchange of houses, Kalasarpa Yoga, the ambition combination, solar yogas, and also the Lugna, which is known as the ascendant rising sign of first house. So those are all different names for the same thing. Okay, so let's take a look. All right, so this is the birth chart for Simone Biles. She was born on March 14th, 1997 at 7:13 a.m. This is birth chart, birth certificate certified here. She was born in Columbus, Ohio, in the United States. So just to take a quick look here, as you can see, she is an Aquarius rising. So if you're new to these style charts, this is a North Indian style chart. And to find the rising sign, you look at this top diamond in the middle. There's a little 11. It's a little bit hard to see because there's a yellow line over it, but there's a little 11 in the bottom corner there. That 11 refers to the 11th constellation of the zodiac, which is Aquarius or Kumbha in Sanskrit. Okay, so that means she's an Aquarius rising. And then for North Indian style charts, to get to the other houses, you count counterclockwise. So then you go back and to the left, and then that little triangle with the 12 in it, that's the next constellation of the zodiac of Pisces, or Mina in Sanskrit. Okay, so she's an Aquarius rising, which, if you're following astrology at all, if you've been following my channel at all, we've been talking about for a long time. Right now, Aquarius is ruled or owned by Saturn, and Saturn happens to be in Aquarius right now. So that's going to make Aquarius very, very strong. Okay, so that already tells you a lot about why Simone Biles is doing really well. But there's a lot more to it. So the day that she was born was ruled by Jupiter, so there's some Jupiterian energy. And then Hurrah Lord, or the Hour Lord, is Sun. So Sun represents things like president, king, leader in charge, the highest kind of authority there. And Jupiter is a planet that represents things like spirituality. So if you just put the energies of these two planets together, we're getting inspiring leader here, which I think she is for a lot of people. Okay, then the birth dasha. Dasha means the planetary period in which she was born, or the planetary period, but we have a birth planetary period here. So she was born into Moon, Mars, and Sun. So we're picking up more Sun energy here. And Mars and Sun are both leadership planets. Sun is more president, king, can be a bit of more of a figurehead. Mars is more of the hands-on leader in the trenches, daily operations, kind of CEO versus president. Okay, but still, the other thing is these are two fiery planets, so a lot of action here, and we have Moon. So Moon represents the emotional mind. So from this, I would gather that she's a leader of both the mind and emotions, which is, as we get into the chart, I think one of the biggest things that makes her so successful, and we'll talk about why. Um, then the current dasha, the current planetary period she's running Rahu, Venus, Venus. So Rahu, which again is one of the planets that creates eclipses. Rahu and Ketu they both have this, what do I say? They both have this energy of being kind of hidden or unexpected or unusual. Okay. And Venus is about, hearts and sociability, compassion, goodwill, that sort of thing, and also desires. So, what I was seeing here is that there's a lot of ambition towards fulfilling hidden desires. Okay. And now the Dasha sequence, so basically what that means is what planets has she been running through her life? Now she started off in Moon. After the Moon period is Mars. After Mars is Rahu. After Rahu is Jupiter. And she is currently in Rahu. She will start Jupiter in November of 2030. Okay. Now already this is telling us a lot because Moon and Mars, Mars is a very active planet. It's can be a very rebellious planet. It's also a very, like it literally can symbolize things like muscles and, that kind of more physical type energy, which clearly she is as a Olympic level gymnast. When we see Moon and Mars, when we see that people have run Moon and Mars early on in life, they typically are a very independent-minded person. Rahu, again, Rahu has a lot of ambition behind it. So she's running her ambitious planets currently. So that's why she's, not just winning, but it takes a lot for her to practice, over and over again, all these, really difficult gymnastics routines and things like that. Okay, and then again, Jupiter is coming November 2030. Now, I wrote down the date here for Jupiter because, she's doing really well right now. She's all over the media, news media. She keeps coming up in my feed. I'm not really following the Olympics, but she keeps popping up. So I was like, oh, I guess she's doing pretty well. And the thing is, I'm sure since she's doing so well, and she's, still pretty young here, they're probably asking her, are you gonna, what about the next Olympics, which would be in 2028 in LA, Los Angeles, right? So I will actually be looking at that a bit. So the Lagna Nakshatra. So Nakshatra, the Lagna again is a rising sign. That's the Aquarius. Nakshatra is a lunar mansion. So there are 27 lunar mansions. Every night the moon passes through another lunar mansion. So after about 27 nights, you get a lunar month. Okay, and each of these nakshatras has a different symbol and energy behind it. Now, the nakshatra of Shatabisha is it literally translated as 100 healers. Okay, so that can indicate a couple different things. One, it can be somebody who, on the positive side, it can, if somebody has positive placements in Shatabisha, that can indicate that somebody is actually like a healer, like a physician or that kind of thing, or nurse or something like that. On the negative side, it could indicate somebody who has illness that's difficult to heal because you would need 100 healers to fix, that situation. So there's a lot of healing energy, I would say, in her chart. Okay. Then the moon nakshatra, so the place where the moon sits, is in a nakshatra called Rohini. Okay. And Rohini is a very, it's considered to be the most kind of attractive and lovely nakshatras. So there's a lot of fertility here and a lot of grace here. And, you can associate the goddess Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and abundance, with Rohini. So that's the kind of energy coming through the mind. Okay. At least at a base level, but there are challenges, as we'll see going forward. Okay, so just to give a little bit of background and context before I, get into too many details about the chart here. So again, if you haven't heard about Simone Biles, she's won 10 Olympic medals and 30 World Championship medals. So she is the most decorated gymnast in history. I mean, that's no small thing, right? She also has the most Olympic medals by a U.S. gymnast. And sometimes, I guess a lot of people refer to her as GOAT, which means what stands for greatest of all time. And if you saw that photo on the first slide that I presented, she's holding up her gold medal, and then she's in the other hand, she's holding up, she actually has a necklace of a goat. so, um, so that was in the picture. All right, now if we're looking at more astrological context for her birth year, one of the first things you'll notice about her chart is when you see Sun very close to Rahu and Ketu. Now, again, Rahu and Ketu are the north and south nodes of the moon. They're not actual, we call them planets in Jyotish, but they're actually calculations, and they're calculations of where the sun path crosses the moon path. Okay. Now, when the sun gets very close, like usually within 10 degrees or so, more or less, 9 degrees of Rahu and Ketu, you should start thinking about there's an eclipse. It's around eclipse time, before or after. And then you can see moon is almost halfway between Rahu and Ketu. Okay. So there was actually a total solar eclipse on March 9th, just a few days before she was born. Okay. Now the solar eclipse was not happening in the United States, but it still, was going on. The other thing to notice about this chart is that you see the sun and it's at like 5 minutes. So it's not, so it just literally switched signs from Aquarius into Pisces here. And that happened at 3:49 in the morning. So just, what is it, 3 hours, 3.5 hours? Barely 3.5 hours before she was born. Now, the thing is that, if it was just a few hours before, if she had Sun in Aquarius, Sun would be aspecting Leo. And currently, very soon, we will have Sun in Leo. So again, Sun represents like president, king, that sort of thing. And Leo is ruled by the Sun. So when you have Sun in its own sign or aspecting its own sign of Leo, that's a lot of fire energy because Leo is a fire sign and Sun is obviously a fire planet. So that can indicate a lot of strong leadership. Okay, so you can see she's just a touch out of there. But, you might still consider that a little bit. The other thing is that in April, what is it? Oh, okay. So Sati Sati. So you can see Saturn is in 14 degrees 22 minutes in Pisces. And the moon is in Taurus at 11 degrees 48. Now, the thing is, it takes about 2.5 years for Saturn to go through a sign. Saturn is the slowest moving planet in classical Jyotish. So you can see it's about halfway through Pisces. So we've probably got another year or so, year plus, for Saturn to finish Pisces and move into Aries. Now, the thing is, once Saturn moves into Aries, what that's going to initiate for Simone, or what did occur for Simone in April of 1998, is that she started Sati Sati. So Sati Sati is a 7-year period where it's basically where Saturn passes through the constellation before placement, where the natal moon is placed, through the constellation where the natal moon is placed, and then after. So basically, Saturn passes through the constellation before, of, and after the moon. And again, 2.5 years by 3, that's about 7 years. Okay. Now, the thing about Sati Sati, a lot of people fear Sati Sati, and it doesn't always have to be bad. It can be a difficult time, though, because the one thing that usually is true about Sati Sati is that somebody will lose a pretty important support system in their life. Okay. So when she was very young, she went into Sati Sati. Now, the thing is, because she, she was not in Sati Sati yet, the Sati Sati started when she was a little bit more cognizant. So if she was born into Sati Sati, maybe halfway through or, just beginning, then, she would have had some difficult time. But, she would have been a baby and maybe not as aware of it, the first year or two, that sort of thing. But, again, she was two-ish, getting on to two-ish or 1, 2. Yeah. So she's just starting to be more aware of the world. And then that's when she entered Sati Sati. So we would consider this as an indication that there were difficulties in childhood. Or that her, again, if she was, up until 8, or so, there were some difficulties for her. The other thing is that once Saturn moves into Aries, so not only is she's starting Sati Sati, but Saturn is debilitated in the sign of Aries. And so Aries in this chart is in the 3rd house of siblings. So there could also be difficulty with siblings, which there was in her life if you know about her bio, and which I'll talk about more. But again, I'm just giving some basic context for her chart. Okay, so that was kind of when she was born and the energies for when she was born. Now, currently, as I mentioned, Saturn is Swa, meaning it's in its own sign in the Lugna, rising sign. So Saturn is a planet that indicates obstacles and delays and structure. And so when you have Saturn moving through a sign, it's like a big steamroller, like just slowly, just, like the ones going down the street, they're moving really slowly, but then they just flatten that street out, all the asphalt and everything. That's kind of what Saturn does. Okay, so the thing is, Saturn in its own sign is going to bring strength, and that's part of why she's doing so well right now. Her health is strong, mind is strong, all this kind of stuff. However, she's still undergoing some deep transformational process, I would say here. And Saturn has been in Aquarius for, a good year and a half, and we've got about 8 months to go. So even though there's some strength here, there is also a reconstruction of self. Now, this might be literal because I'm sure her body's been and her mind has been through, a lot training and, training for the Olympics, now going through the Olympics. I'm sure she hasn't gone through without, some boo-boos, mentally, emotionally, physically. But the other thing is that Saturn at this time is in a nakshatra called Purva Bhadrapada, which is symbolized by the front legs of a funeral pyre. So with that, energy or symbol, you can imagine there's a lot of destruction, there's a lot of flames, there's a lot of transformation. Again, since we're referring to cremation here, in Indian culture, that process is thought to release the soul from the body. So again, if you add that layer of interpretation into this steamrolling Saturn going through Aquarius, even though it's giving Simone strength, there's also a deep transformation going on here, a maturation process going on here. Okay. Also, Saturn is retrograde right now. And it's in Purva Bhadrapada, but it'll be in Shantabhisha, so again, this 100 healers energy on October 3rd, just after the solar eclipse. We're going to have a solar eclipse on October 2nd. So again, it's like healing energy after. And again, with eclipses, the only thing you can really say consistently about eclipses is that expect the unexpected. So, yeah, and then the eclipses this time around are happening in her second house and also her eighth house. So the second house is like family, inner circle, speech, assets, and then the eighth house is things like deep psychology. So, the upcoming time right now, even though it may not seem like there are any chinks in the armor for Simone because she's doing so phenomenally well, there's deeper stuff going on here for her. Okay, Jupiter in this chart is in Capricorn, and it will aspect the other Earth signs of Taurus and Virgo. And currently, we have Jupiter and another Earth sign of Taurus. So actually, in this current sky pattern, Jupiter is aspecting the three Earth signs. What else? Oh, Rahu and Ketu. So she has Rahu and Ketu on the Virgo Pisces axis. And currently, Rahu and Ketu, they're reversed. They're still on the Virgo Pisces axis, but they're reversed. But again, they have a lot of overlapping energy. And then, as I mentioned, on 16th of August, Sun will enter Leo. And yeah, the upcoming eclipses I mentioned for her will affect, family, speech, and things she talks about, psychology. The other thing to note is that once Saturn transits from Aquarius into Pisces, and this is going to happen in March of 2025, so in about 8 months, she will go through her Saturn return. Now, typically, and this happens, usually 29 years of age or so, because again, it takes 29 years for Saturn to go through the zodiac. Whole zodiac. So usually when people go through a Saturn return, they usually, kind of take a left turn. It's like they find some new direction for themselves in their life. So between this, Saturn steamrolling through her lugna and that creating some kind of transformation, and then after that, as soon as that happens, she's going to go through Saturn return. And then after that, she's going through Sati Sati. um, she's going to go through a lot of deep personal transformation, over the next few years, before the Summer Olympics of 2028 shows up. So keep that in mind as we go forward through the rest of the analysis here. Okay, so let's. What I usually do with these charts is I start at the top in the lugna. So again, we'll get more information about Simone and why she's such a powerful lady, especially at this moment in time. All right, so the lugna again is Aquarius or Kumbha, as it's known as in Sanskrit. It's a fixed air sign, or stira vayu. Now, this is really important. So, an air sign is a sign that indicates a lot of mental activity, thoughts, that sort of thing. And then it's fixed, so that means that she has an unwavering mentality. I mean, you'd have to, right? I mean, she's been doing gymnastics, I think, since she was 6. All the training out. I think she switched. She went from regular school to homeschooling. I think she went from 20 hours of training to 32 hours of training a week. So she had basically a full-time job of training for the training in gymnastics while going to school. Um, so I mean that's no small joke. I mean that's no joke, especially after what 20 years or so or more of that. Um, so she's very the thing though is that with a fixed air sign, she may have a hard time um, being flexible mentally, which, again, works for her as this Olympic superstar. I mean, she's just focused and she doesn't alter her view, but again, in other contexts, maybe less flexible. The other thing to note is that Shatabhisha, the Lagna Nakshatra, is in the star or Tara of Rahu. I've been talking about Rahu a bit, the north node of the moon. there's a lot of ambition associated with Rahu, but there's also this like hidden, unexpected quality. So, because Rahu isn't in the Lagna where it's more obvious, she has Rahu in the eighth house of deep psychology. So she has a very different mindset, an alternative mindset than most people. Um, the other thing is Rahu can indicate things like Rahu and Ketu both can indicate things like, like an obsessive quality, or it can be sometimes mental health. But the thing is, because, again, you can't, just by at the first glance, Rahu is not obvious in her Lagna, but again, her Lagna is in the store of Rahu, and then she's got Rahu in deep psychology. So she's got that. And I mean, I think she would have to be a bit obsessive about at least gymnastics, to do it as much as she does for as long as she does. Um, the other thing about it is that, now we're getting into it, is that, if you know about her past, and I didn't until I read what I do with these charts is I do the chart analysis first, and then I'll go read, a short bio on them just to double check and make sure that I'm not too far off on what I'm finding. But so a bit about her is that she had three siblings. There was in the bio, there was no mention of a father, but she had a mother who had young kids, and couldn't, all it was said was she couldn't take care of the kids. So the four kids ended up in the foster system. They were in there, and then after a few years, I guess a relative found out that the kids were in the foster system, and then they started trying to get the kids out. So I think they adopted two, Simone, and she has a twin sister, and then another relative adopted the two older kids. So, again, that's gets into that whole she was almost born into Sati Sati. So her childhood was quite chaotic, um, and I'm sure not easy. And again, but the thing is that even though it wasn't easy, I have a feeling that that is what gives her the mentality to do what she does. So, and again, we'll keep going through this, but I do believe that there is some mental health stuff here, and especially with Venus and the rising sign here. And Venus is, you can kind of think of that as somebody's heart, a very compassionate and sweet, loving, um, social grace, these sorts of things, compassion. The thing is, in her chart, Venus is combust, meaning it's so close to the sun you can't see it. So again, there's this hidden quality. Um, of emotions here. And you can see Venus and Moon are in the four kendras, the four houses in the middle. The four houses in the middle are kind of like the core person. So she has Venus and Moon are the two emotional planets in the core, in the kendras as her core. But the thing is, Venus is not visible. And typically, what I find with people who have Venus combust is that they may not express their emotions, they keep it hidden inside. So again, we've got this Rahu energy with the combust Venus in the top. So even though she's quite an emotional person, she doesn't let it show. And that's how she can like, do these things. I mean, it's like sort of like a superhero in a way. I mean, she seems fearless. She's flipping herself around. I mean, you never see me, even try. I would just laugh at myself. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not getting on a balance beam. Forget that. But she makes it look easy, and she does it with a smile, and so that looks like part of her nature, but also part of her experience probably reinforced that in terms of luckily she had that to keep her strong. And a lot of kids, when they go through a situation like that, they end up with all kinds of problems, like drugs or whatever else, but instead she channeled all that energy into becoming this like super gymnast. But the problem though is that again, that works for her in many ways, to not show her emotions, but I'm sure that in other contexts it's probably not um, helpful. Let's just put it that way. All right. So the other thing is that with the Venus being combust, she probably won't express like pain very well. Um, which, I would imagine, jumping around and getting banged up. I mean, I don't know how many times these folks fall down and hurt ankles and wrists or shoulders or whatever because they're flipping around. Um, the attitude with this kind of chart is somebody who would just kind of suck it up and keep going as long as they could. Yeah. So then the Lugnatia here, the Lugnatia is a ruling planet for the chart. And again, Saturn rules Aquarius. So Saturn's the ruling planet, or Lugnatia. Saturn is also combust here. We have 3 combust planets in this chart because they're so close to the sun. So Venus, Mercury, and Saturn are all combust. So Venus being combust will give her, keeping her emotions to herself, not expressing so much. Mercury combust will give a lot of thoughts and, kind of mental activity. Saturn combust will give a lot of inner strength, kind of steel will, because Saturn is like the endurance, but like inner endurance. So this is what we've got on the table, which again is not surprising given who Simone Biles is and how well she's done. But this combust Saturn is in a nakshatra called Uttarabhadrapada. Uttarabhadrapada is a back legs of a funeral pyre. So again, there's this like combustion energy. There's this change and turnover energy. But it's a little different from Purva Bhadrapada, where there's more containment and more like conscious release of things. And so because her ruling planet is an Uttar Bhadrapada, what I'm saying here is that she's somebody who can like regenerate herself. And this goes along with that kind of Shatabisha healing energy. She can regenerate herself mentally and emotionally and physically. And that's what she does, because all this like physical activity she does, I mean, when you're actually, people get confused about that sometimes, but when you're doing all this athletic stuff, your muscles and ligaments and everything are actually breaking down. And then when you rest, that's when they regenerate themselves. So, this is clearly somebody with this fixed mind and this Saturn Uttarabhadrapada. This is somebody who can bounce back. We've got that already. And the Saturn has gone to the second house, which is an Artisthana. An Artisthana is a house related to material things. So this is somebody who's focused on tangible results. And again, since Saturn is a ruling planet for the Lugnatia, or the Lugna, and again, the Lugna or Ascendant, Rising Sign, first house, all different names for the same thing, represents the body. It represents the personality. It's kind of like the first pass of what people know about you or see about you. It's not getting under the hood of the car, but it's like a bit of like a public image or persona. Yeah, and so she's somebody who can like keep coming back, you know. Um, and again with this Uttarabhadrapada, like she does it purposely. Like she's even though like it has to be a very destructive process for the body. She knows it and she does it and she keeps doing it. Like so it's a conscious, kind of constant rebirth, in a way, day to day, week to week, that's going on for her. Yeah, so then she's got the combust. Oh, and then Mercury is not only combust, but it's also debilitated. So that gives Mercury 2 different levels of pretty strong, I would say, weakness typically. It's gonna be very challenged. Mercury is gonna be very challenged in this chart because 1 is debilitated, 2 it's combust. It is with Sun, and so when you get Mercury and Sun together in the same sign, and it's qualified by Mercury or Sun owning either the first house, the second house, or the fifth house, or being related to those 3. And she does because Mercury owns the fifth house. That will give intelligence. That's a Buddha Ditya Yoga. It's a planetary combination that gives intelligence, but more of like a calculating type intelligence. And I'm sure like she's basically an expert in physics, and how to move her body through the air and off the mat, and all this force and trajectory and all that. What else here? But the Mercury represents the rational, logical mind. It is also protected a bit because we do have a parivartan exchange of houses between Saturn and Jupiter, because Saturn's in the sign of Jupiter, Jupiter's in the sign of Saturn. So even though it looks like Jupiter's in the 12th house here, you can actually bring it into the second house as well. And Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces, where Mercury is. So even though Mercury is debilitated or Nietzsche, when you bring Jupiter in there, that will break the debilitation. It won't pull it up completely, but it'll ameliorate it to some degree. And that's called a Nietzsche Bhanga, so a breaking of debilitation. So there's some support here, but the thing is, like, again, it's Mercury's debilitated, Mercury's combust, and you've got four malefics on Mercury. We've got Saturn, we've got Ketu, we've got Sun, we've got Mars. And again, Jupiter helps a bit, but I don't think Jupiter, the thing is, Jupiter's in a negative sign and Jupiter's debilitated. So Jupiter's not a super strong planet. It is stronger. Luckily, it gets more strength because there's this parivartan with Saturn. Um, but which would bring actually this, especially the Jupiter, would bring a lot of power to her second house of speech. So she's all over the media. Um, and family. But the thing is that there's still chaos going on in the family, which there was, in childhood. Okay. The other thing is that Mercury is the lord of the fifth house, and the fifth house is intellect. So this, I could imagine that she can get confused quite a bit. But the other thing is, again, with these malefics, like Saturn and Mars, when you get Saturn and Mars together, you usually get like an engineering type energy. When you get Saturn and Mars together, you can get a workaholic type energy, which I'm sure she is. And then K2 can be kind of a separatist type energy. So, and then, again, the Saturn, Mercury, Sun, and are aspecting into the eighth house of deep psychology. So she has basically Saturn, Mercury, Sun, K2, Mars, Jupiter in the second house. And she has Saturn, Mercury, Sun, Mars, Rahu in the eighth house. And again, since Ketu and Rahu can indicate um, obsession, compulsion, mental illness, and it's with this debilitated combust Mercury. Um, I think her mind can go spinning sometimes, and she's admitted actually, and I don't mind saying that. I'm just seeing in the chart, but then when I read her bio, she said that she's been diagnosed with ADHD and she takes Ritalin, and she had to like clear that. For her gymnastics competition stuff. So that's out there. I don't like to when I go through these charts, I see what I see, and I just I try to only share what's already out there. I don't want to out anybody and make this a whole tabloidy type thing. Um, so anyway, so I wasn't surprised that she has that diagnosis based on this chart. So intelligence in there, but again, with all these malefics, debilitation, combustion, that's a lot for her. Um, the Mercury, the rational mind to process. The other thing is that, since we're sort of on that subject, we have Saturn aspecting the moon. So the moon is the other planet representing the mind. It's more the emotional mind, intuitive mind, but Saturn is going to create drag, delays, obstacles. Saturn can bring skepticism, doubts, fears, anxiety, worry. So even though she looks fearless, and in some ways, respect, she is fearless, um, again, a lot of what goes on underneath the surface is that there's a lot of emotion and a lot of mental churning for her, even though she's always got, at least every time I see her, not that I follow her that closely, but she's got a big smile and, she's like this super dynamo, and all that. So, okay. So, Mercury and Sun are both in Purvadramana. Again, that's that front legs of the funeral pyre. That can be a pretty destructive energy there. And she has Saturn, Mercury, Sun here. Those are also, like, from a medical perspective, those are all nervous system planets. So Sun is central nervous system, Mercury is peripheral nervous system, and Saturn is the neuromuscular system. And they're aspecting the eighth house of chronic injuries or chronic, illness. And she's got Mars there. So with especially Mars and K2 here, when you get Mars and K2 together, you can get a lot of accidents and injuries. So I'm sure she's got probably can't stop counting at this point. I'm sure there have been so many, a lot of chronic pain, I would say, from, uh, myriad of injuries from what she does. And what else? So aspecting the second house is this retrograde Mars. So this Mars is, it represents things like energy and fire and passion and muscles, literally, and activity. So this is kind of the fire in her and deep in her mind as well. And Mars is in a nutshell called Uttar Falguni. Uttar Falguni is symbolized by a hammock or a marital bed. And that's all about like enjoyment and the finer things of life and that sort of thing. But with Uttar Falguni, it's not just like pleasure for pleasure's sake, but it's like pleasure with a purpose. And so that's, I think, sports for her. She enjoys it quite a bit, but there's also some additional purpose for her. And I think it was first pulling herself, kind of out of a, negative situation growing up, and then using that, I'm sure, to help others now. So, and then we've got Jupiter aspecting the second house as well. So again, with all these planets, you can see I've circled in the second house, just the four, forget like Mars aspecting there and Jupiter aspecting there, just the four planets in one house. That gives us a Pravraja yoga or a planetary combination that indicates life focus. So the second house, again, represents things like family. I'm sure that's key for her. Also, it represents like speech and communication. And typically, when people have planets in the second house. Um, what was it? Like the second house represents like above the neck, um, like the person, the physicality above the neck, like head and neck. So usually, like especially since her ruling planet is Saturn and it's gone to the second house, she's somebody who's easily recognizable by her face and body. Which is true. Okay, so then not to forget Jupiter here. Jupiter is also involved in the second house because of the parivartan exchange of houses with Saturn. And Jupiter is in a nakshatra called Shravana. Shravana, the symbol of that is like 3 footprints in the sand. It can also be an ear. But Shravana is associated with storytelling. So, in the mix here in the second house, and again, the reason I look at this whole one slide is about basically the first and second house because it's like where all the energy is going pretty much. Just analyzing the first and second house will tell you a lot about her. So Jupiter's aspect is involved with the second house, and Mercury, Jupiter and Mercury are the two education planets. They're the two communication planets. They're the two media and news planets. And then you've got Sun, and you've got Ketu, and then you've got Saturn here. So what I would see, she's somebody who's a pretty inspiring speaker, and she's going to be famous not only for a kind of unusual physique, which she's very, quite petite, 4 feet 8 inches, I believe. And also like being in the gymnastics world. I mean, there aren't too many, black women and or black, men either in that field, so she's unusual that way. Um, And then, just her sports, right? I mean, she does all these unusual tricks. I mean, that's how they get more points and stuff like that. So she's going to be really good at generating media buzz, which seems to be true. I mean, I keep hearing about her, and I'm not even like again following the Olympics. So, um, yeah. So we can see all that. And the other thing I'm seeing here, besides her being a gymnast, which she's been. I can see potentially that she would be like a good sports commentator, journalist type person. And yeah, anyway, I'll just keep it at that for now, but keep that in mind. All right, so if we put all this together, and there's a lot to put together, she's driven, she's a workaholic, fiery, extreme, probably obsessive thoughts, hard to control at times. her speech may not reflect her inner world, true self, and emotion. So that's not only the Venus combos, but I've mentioned in other talks that when you have Ketu or Rahu, because of that hidden quality of Rahu Ketu, when I see people with Rahu and Ketu in the second house of speech, the way somebody talks kind of throws you off from who they really are. And it's not that they're lying or hiding anything, specifically trying to, but like they might be brilliant, but the way they speak, you would not know that or guess that. Or it could be the other way around, where somebody speaks really well and you're like, wow, you're really into everything that they say, and you're thinking, oh, this person's amazing. And then you find out like the opposite is true. Like it's that kind of, it can be that kind of thing. So, the other thing is Rahu and Ketu can symbolize things like technology. So again, this is like, digital news media, television, all this kind of stuff. So again, you know, and this is again getting back to this whole persona thing of like, I think, the way she projects herself and the public image that she's constructed, I would say consciously constructed, doesn't fully portray who she is. Like, I think inside she's a lot more soft and emotional, um, and wounded because it's again, you can't, again, you don't bring all that sort of vulnerability to like this world stage on television in front of millions of viewers, and you gotta do your thing on the balance beam, right? So yeah. So anyway, clearly a leader. She's got Sun and Mars here. She's in this house, so she and strong speech, I would say. Um, I would say that this ability to regenerate that I mentioned for her is also ability to regenerate her family, which happened. The other thing is that, since Mercury is kind of wobbly and K2's there, Jupiter's there, Mars is there, she may she may talk a lot. I don't know. I don't remember actually hearing her talk. I should go listen to her talk. Um, but the other thing is like she's with this kind of combination, you wouldn't necessarily know what she's going to say. You don't know what's going to come out of her mouth. Um, so there's this kind of like quirkiness, maybe, or at least unexpected quality, the way she talks. Um, what else? I think she can, or her speech could be stoic and or harsh at times because you have all these malefic energy, you have all these malefic planets. I mean, luckily Jupiter's in there, so Jupiter will take the edge off, especially since it's its own sign. But again, you have Venus and Moon, the two emotional planets, not involved in this really hardcore mix on the 2-8 axis. So, yeah, it's like, keep emotions out of it, just be, clear-minded, business-like, engineer-like, can be. Except again that Jupiter kind of comes in there, so that's nice. Um, what else? Again, engineering type mind, speech, potentially family as well. She also has 6 planets in dual signs. So she's got Rahu, Mars, Sun, Mercury, Saturn, Ketu. 6 out of 9 planets in dual signs. So she's gonna, there's gonna be this wavering quality to her. Times, maybe in the way she speaks or what she speaks about. Um, and then Venus and Moon and the Candors, I mentioned emotional but not really expressing it. So the other thing is all these like malefic planets on Mercury. I think she's somebody who potentially like rationalize decisions, um, but at the same time, she's famous for her explosive physical actions and the unusual news she generates, and she's probably really great at marketing. I assume it's probably part of what she does. She's really good at marketing herself. She may also project cheerfulness, which again, every time I see her, she's got this big smile on, and that would be the Jupiter in its own sign, because Jupiter's a very cheerful planet. But again, there's some brokenheartedness with this combus Venus, and the thing too is Venus is in Purva Bhadrapada, So Venus, again, it's like the heart energy and relationships and stuff like that. That's been on the funeral pyre for her. So she's been through a lot, emotionally and mentally. But she doesn't wear her heart on her sleeve. Not this one. She makes it look easy, and that's, again, especially Americans, they love that kind of underdog story. They go crazy about that. So, um, what else? Oh, and then so again, with this, all these malefics too on like Saturn, which again represents her mind and body. There's a lot of conscious, like she's conscious, I mean, it sounds funny to say this because she gets medals for doing it, but she's constantly subjecting her mind and body to stress and tearing down and then bouncing back. Like that's the job, you know. So that's all here in her chart. Okay, so what else? Yeah, so she's definitely hardcore in some respects. Although again, she's emotional too, but that's not what she shares with people. Jupiter, Saturn, Parivartan I've been talking about. And again, when there's Jupiter coming into this pretty hardcore mix, Jupiter represents things like wisdom and balance. So hopefully, again, that's part of what will help her take the edge off. But the other thing is she's moving into Jupiter in 2030. So I think that's when she might, kind of give herself some breathing space, allow herself to be human like the rest of us. um, we'll see though. I mean, she's got, and this, again, this whole thing here on the 2-8 axis, she's been running. So again, after Moon, she went into Mars and Rahu. So you can see like the two planets she's been running most of her life up to this point are, on this 2-8 axis, like this whole, system here. And from a psychological point of view, I would say this is like the ability to dissociate. So a lot of athletes have that actually, like especially endurance athletes, like marathon runners and ultra marathon runners or whatever. 'Cause it is painful. I mean, some of these people run so much or push themselves so much, like they end up like peeing blood. I mean, there's got to be pain. You can't. Yeah, how can you not feel that? But they have the ability to kind of disassociate their mind to overcome those natural pain signals so that they can keep going. Um, and that seems to be what Simone Biles has. So, and a lot of people develop that ability to dissociate when they've been through like childhood trauma. So, actually, at some point, I analyzed the chart for Diana Nyad. So, if anybody wants another sports person, and she's an ultra distance swimmer, like she swam from whatever Cuba to Florida, with sharks and all this jellyfish and all this kind of stuff. And she's got kind of a similar thing going on for her in terms of dissociation. Yeah. So, what else? Okay. Um, so the other thing with Jupiter is that, so the thing with Jupiter too is since Jupiter is the lord of the second house and the second house represents family, and Jupiter is debilitated and it's gone to the 12th house of losses and expenditures. Just from that, I assumed that there was some kind of loss in the family or losses through family. Um, and that also potentially the family could be like an immigrant family because 12th house can represent like foreign places, overseas places. And I don't know about her birth mother or father, but her adoptive mother was from Belize. And so through adoption, um, there is this immigrant, you know, quality. And I think Simone is actually a dual citizen. So she sort of became, sort of internationalized through her adoption. Um, what else? The other thing, okay, this is another thing. So, I didn't, I was seeing this stuff, but I was like, maybe I shouldn't say it because I don't know what's out in the news. And again, I don't want to share personal information that's not already out there. But Jupiter represents older siblings. Right? And the thing is, Jupiter is not only lord of the second house of family, but Jupiter is the lord of the 11th house. Now, usually the third house is considered the house of siblings, but some people will use the 11th house as a house for older siblings. So you have the planet representing older siblings, because usually Mars represents siblings, like generally, or younger siblings. And Jupiter can be used to signify older siblings. So the planet signifying older siblings is Lord of the house signifying older siblings. So and that's gone into debilitation in the 12th house. So I said there might have been some loss of siblings. And again, the family was kind of split up. Two went with one family and two went with the other. So yeah, that was actually in the chart. Um, the other thing, so Jupiter is Lord of the second house and ninth house. Second house is family, but ninth house is like clubs, groups, and societies and friends. I'm sure she to be this focused for this long and this successful too, frankly, I'm sure she lost a lot of friends. Like she might be surrounded by a bunch of groups, but like not close up, I mean, most people won't have close up access to her. Um, the other thing is that the second house is assets and the 11th house is income. So there can be loss of assets and income here, potentially. There is some, again, saving here because when you swap Jupiter and Saturn, Saturn will go into Capricorn in the 12th house, and that'll protect a bit, but usually more for inanimate things. Like it might protect income. Like, I was reading just, what was it, yesterday, like a lot of Olympics athletes, like they're actually in deep debt because they have a lot of expenses they have to pay. They don't generate much earnings. I think the average like $15,000 a year or something like that. And they're doing all these amazing things and getting gold medals and stuff, but a lot of them don't make money or actually go into debt. So I think with her, she's got these other ways of generating money, but you can see there's like a money cycle here. But I think with this Parivartana, it will protect money and assets for her. But what it won't protect in is like loss of relationships and people. The other thing is Jupiter represents human beings. So there's a loss of people in her life. And again, we've already got the Venus, right, in Purva Drapada, the funeral pyre energy. So not surprising. Okay. And Jupiter represents speech. So again, because of the sort of chaotic energy in the second house, again, sometimes she may with this many malefics in the second house, and Ketu and Mars there, she could be I'm guessing she could be explosive at times and with her speech and so and she might have lost some friends or opportunities that way. Um, and I would say like being detached, losses there. What else? There would, because of these planets in the second house, there's going to be gains through father, so Sun, friends, Mercury, Saturn, and Ketu, like foreigners. Um, yeah, so I don't know if that could be like adoptive father, because again, I have no info about the biological father, so I don't know about that. Um, okay, yeah. So then other yogas, I mentioned a few. So there's that Pravraja yoga, four planets in the second house there. The other thing about the Pravraja yoga is that of those four planets, the only one you can see is the sun. So sun's going to be the dominant planet in the Pravraja yoga. And when sun is the dominant planet in the Pravraja yoga, you can get somebody who's like a leader of leaders, which she is. So that's true. And again, life focus, family and speech, but also her regenerating of self, literally. And then she's got the Buddha Ditya Yoga, that's the Mercury Sun combination, which will give her intelligence. She's got a Shubha Vashi Yoga, so that's that Venus in the 12th house from the sun. So it's a natural benefic planet from the sun. And when you have that combination going on, you get somebody who's renowned, which she is. She also has a Kala Sarpa Yoga. I would consider this a Kala Sarpa Yoga. She's got uh, usually when I see Saturn and Moon on one side of the K2 axis and the other planets on the other, I would consider the Kala Sarpa. Mars is just, a degree away from Rahu, so I would still consider this a Kala Sarpa Yoga, especially because you have, two fire planets, Sun, Mars with Rahu Ketu. This is all about, being on top here. So that's going to give her ambition, but also, again, that like unusual quality, to her. What else? Yeah. Then the Chandragrahas. So these are planets of vulnerability. Okay, so we have Mars. In this mix, we have Mars, Moon, Saturn, Venus. Okay, so Mars and Saturn together are the body, but also like a workaholic energy. And then Moon and Venus, I've been talking about, are emotions. So this driving of self relentlessly of body and mind and emotions, uh, that will be tough for her. I mean, it seems like it's a compulsive thing for her based on this. Um, to um, again, in a way, she's taken all of this, this experience she's been through and channeled it into her, gymnastics career. But you might wonder, like, how much has she really unpacked the emotions? Or has she been, like, pleasantly distracted with all the gold medals and stuff from really digging deep into the emotions? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot there. It can't be easy. I'm sure it's very painful. And we're all, we all have a different pace of journey with all that stuff. But I would wonder, looking at this chart. What else? So money planet. So the yogi is Saturn. So she's going to be a big earning for her is her body and her personality, which is true. And then the moon is both Ava Yogi and duplicate yogi. So the Ava Yogi can symbolize dearth, and the duplicate duplicate planet yogi can indicate um, wealth and stuff like that. And so there's going to be cycles here of um, financial gains and losses, which again is not surprising given that Jupiter, the Lord of both the second and the 11th houses, is debilitated in the 12th house. So that's not surprising. Um, but again, there's going to be some protection there because of that exchange, or house exchange with Saturn. Her body, what did I write? Her body, personality, fame will be financial benefits, cycles of financial loss of people, family, inner circle groups. And again, with all this Rahu energy, she's somebody who's going to keep you guessing. Uh, because again, she's got Rahu Ketu, in this second house of speech, and she's constantly in the news. So she's going to, keep people guessing with what she's going to do next. But then again, she's living in the star of Rahu, so you get more and more of it for her. And she's in Rahu currently, you know what I mean? And then the other thing is that, I didn't mention, when somebody runs Rahu, it's not like other planets. So, like when she ran Mars, she was just running Mars. Okay, and Mars is still, you can see like Mars is here in the eighth house of psychology. So there was, some anger. Looks like Mars can symbolize anger. And you see these red arrows coming from Mars. So Mars aspects the 11th house, of clubs, groups, societies, and older siblings, income. And then Mars is going to aspect the second house of speech. So especially when she was younger, I bet she was quite verbal. Unexpectedly, kind of unexpected verbal outbursts I would see. And then Mars is aspecting her third house of younger siblings. And, Mars is in its own house in the third. And the other thing is the third house not only represents siblings and younger siblings, but it represents courage. And Mars is the planet of courage. So she has a lot of courage. That's what gives her the fearlessness to jump up on the balance beam and flip all over the, mats and all, she's so there's that physically she's fearless. Um, I wonder, again, I wonder about mentally, emotionally. But she's got enough. I mean, with this fixed Aquarius air sign and all this, like she's got enough to do what she does. I mean, that's not an easy thing. Um, where was I going with this? I was getting back to get off track. Sorry. So Mars. So when she was running Mars, she was just running a clean, pure Mars by itself. When you run Rahu or Ketu, then you're running not only Rahu and what it represents, but you're running the planets that are aspecting Rahu. So Rahu is touching Mars, Sun, Mercury, Saturn. It's also in the spot, the ruling planet of Mercury and Virgo here. So, and you have Jupiter aspecting Rahu. So basically, when she's running Rahu, she is running all the planets in her chart except I think Moon and Venus. So when you run Rahu or Ketu, that can really bring together all the different parts of somebody's chart and really kind of launch them forward. Not always, but um, that seems to be the case. So Rahu, again, running Rahu and Ketu Dishas are different than other planetary periods. So keep that in mind. Okay, so the second house, I've basically been talking about the first house and second house all together here, but just I think I had a couple more things. So yeah, the second lord of the second house is a debilitated Parivartana Jupiter mixed in here with Sun, Ketu, Mars, combust Saturn, and combust Mercury. So the other thing that's interesting here, which is why I wrote it down. So Saturn is in its own star, or Tara, as they say in Sanskrit. So just Saturn. So the Lugna is in Rahu, but Saturn is in its own star. That's going to give Saturn additional strength, almost like Saturn in Aquarius that we've got running through the sky right now. So she's inherently got this, endurance within endurance type, persistence within persistence type energy going on here. Besides this, like, unusual ambition, quirkiness type energy from Rahu. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so this next slide, the same stuff is on the left, on the right, notes for the other houses, and clearly, like, I've gone on and on about the first and second house, but now we'll just kind of zip through the others. So the third house, the third lord, is a retrograde Mars. It's no Falguni. It's aspecting its own sign. Again, much courage, physical activity. She enjoys physical activity with purpose. Also has a strong sibling here, I would say. Um, the fourth house lord, combust Venus, and it's a dark moon because it's so close to the sun. But the moon is exaggerated here. It's in Digabala as a directional strength. It's also Karkabhavanasha, and what that means is the planet representing a person is in the house representing the person. Moon represents mom, and it's in the house representing mom, which actually sounds like a good idea, but actually it means that there's problems with mom. And again, mom was unable to take care of the kids for some reason. Didn't say why in the bio, but there was some trouble there. And then this fourth house is aspected by Saturn and Jupiter. So Saturn and Jupiter, those are like two opposites. Jupiter is like the optimistic um, kind of planet and goodness and kind of Santa Claus, generous and happy, jolly. And Saturn's the opposite, where it's like skepticism, delays, anxiety, depression. And because they're both on the mind, even though the mind thinks generally nice thoughts, because you have these two opposing energies, that's going to make the mind and emotions spin, like a emotional, kind of an emotional roller coaster is what I'm saying here. So, that's maybe true for Simone, but it looks like probably her mother. Yeah. Um, and so what did I write here? Okay, the other thing is the fourth house represents education. So this is going to create, again, some wobbling here, even though Moon is exalted here, which is nice. It's got all these other things going on. So it's just a very exaggerated Moon. And so she signed a letter of intent to start with UCLA for college, and then she reneged on that and decided to go with just training for gymnastics. So this energy in the fourth house is going to be trouble for that as well. The fifth house lord is this debilitated combust Mercury with the four malefics and Jupiter. Again, this gets into this engineering kind of mindset. Some confusion though. And the other thing is that this is like a stage. So, we're basically bringing fifth house energy. If we follow Mercury, the Lord of the fifth house is gone in the second. So we're bringing fifth house energy into the second house here. So again, this whole built up public persona news media situation, there's some performance aspect to that, which is not surprising or unusual. Um, then the sixth house Lord is Moon, which is exaggerated in many ways, and it's aspected by Jupiter and Saturn. So what's nice about that is Jupiter's exalted there, but you have which gives her, I believe, the ability to overcome competitors because the sixth house is, seen as like enemy's competitor's house. So I think that's how she can win so many awards. Um, and it also will stabilize, this moon energy will stabilize this moon energy for her. The Saturn will bring persistence because the sixth house also represents like daily activities and routines and stuff. So then the seventh house, seventh lord is Sun. Um, so her partners in personal and professional are going to be high level leaders, because again, the sun represents a king, president. Eighth house lord is the Mercury. It's aspecting its own sign, and then again, you've got this whole gaggle of planets: Mars, Rahu, Saturn, Sun, Jupiter on the eighth house. That's going to give her an ambitious mind, practical mind. She'll be able to dissociate. She's a perfectionist, obsessive, objective, and then again, a chronic injury and pain. The ninth house lord is Venus. It's aspected by an exalted Saturn when you do the exchange between Saturn and Jupiter. This will bring a strong father, government, guru, like teachers, religion. Um, I think her family is Catholic, so there's religion there. And the thing that was like Venus, what's interesting too is this combos Venus is lord of both the fourth house and the ninth house. So usually when the lord of the house that's representing a person is combust, and also the karaka, like the planet that the person that the planet symbolizes is combust, you may not see that person much. And so again, Venus is the lord of the fourth house for mother. She didn't see her mother as much as most people do. And then I didn't hear about a biological father, but it doesn't sound like she saw him much. And then, I mean, her husband, she's married. Her husband's also a professional athlete. And so I imagine with both their schedules and stuff, that might be tricky. I mean, I'm guessing they don't have the typical, yeah, let's have dinner at 6, honey, and watch Netflix. I'm guessing that's not their life. But maybe some days it is. So yeah, but with the Venus being the lord of both the fourth and ninth house, combust, I would guess she doesn't see her parents much. Um, the 10th house lord is Mars, and this house is aspected by Moon and Jupiter. So a lot of public appearances, public speaking is her day job. She does that during the day. When she's not competing, I guess, and training. Then the 11th house lord is Jupiter. It's aspected by Saturn and Mars. So there's a lot of effort and charity, I would say, with groups and people. And again, loss of older siblings, as I mentioned her. Maybe not completely, but there was a divergence there, right? Her older siblings got adopted by another family. Then the 12th house lord, Saturn is aspecting here through Parivartana and Jupiter. It's here. And then there's also Rahu's aspecting here. So, again, I was getting like a family who were immigrants. And again, the adoptive mother at least was a Belizean citizen. And then losses of income, close people, cycles of this, some protection though. And then again, once she gets into this Jupiter Dasha in 2030, it's going to be a big shift for her. And so, especially because Jupiter is like debilitated and in the 12th house, I was kind of seeing this as like probably when she's going to retire. And also, I think she's going to be, Jupiter represents kids. And she has Jupiter aspecting the sixth house of especially like adoptive or um, adopted children or stepchildren, foster children. So that might be, part of her plan or interest, because the interest will naturally shift because she'll be out of this like ambitious Rahu energy and she'll be more in like Jupiter, Jupiter energy. The other thing is that Jupiter is a very compassionate and charitable planet, and it's in the 12th house. So this could be, even though it's like loss and expenditures, this could be like charitable losses, like, again, by design. And also the clubs, group, society house of 11th house. Jupiter's the lord of that. So she could get involved with like charity groups and organizations, do some traveling, with Jupiter. And also with this party of arts in between Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter is going to be Swan in the second house. So you could see that being like speaking and investing. And family. So again, once she moves into Jupiter, I think she will definitely be, uh, you know, moving out of being a more um, active gymnast at that point. But the thing is, that's not happening in 2030, and we've got one Olympics in 2028. So that's I think the question here. So let's see. Let's dig in deeper here by looking at the sub zodiacs, Amsha's divisional charts. Okay, so these are the charts I looked at. And again, I wasn't looking at her whole life. I was just looking at like career, and part of why she's successful and potentially will she, show up for another Summer Olympics in 2028. Um, I wasn't really seeing it again, past 2030, but because of she's moving into this Jupiter Shah and is debilitated in the 12th house, although I think she will do more speaking and again charity work at that point. But let's just remind ourselves here. So these subcharts or subzodiacs, amshas, all different names for the same thing. This is important. This is an important note. So I don't usually talk about this. So the way that these charts are created is that like you take to get the D3, for example, the D3 represents is a subchart for siblings. Okay, what you do is like you take each house, like the lugna, and you divide it into three parts, and then you start slotting planets in there. And that's how you create these subcharts. So it's the D3, you slice and dice each house into three parts. For the D10, you slice and dice each house into 10 parts. For the D27, you slice and dice each house by 27 parts. Okay. So you can imagine the higher number of the chart, like the D27, or like if there's a D60, I think that's the highest one. And the thing is, it's like each house is only 30 degrees. So if you're slicing and dicing a chart by 60 parts, it means each slot is only half a degree. And then you're like creating a chart from that. Okay. So now the thing is, what are they right here? Oh, okay. So what's important is that her lugna, right, the Shadabisha energy is at 10:28, 10 degrees 28 minutes. Very close to 10 degrees. So when you have a lugna close to 10 degrees, what that means is every subchart that's a multiple of 3 is going to be compromised because you're slicing and dicing right at the tip, like right at the junction point, essentially. So again, if you have a lugna and you divide it by 3 and it's 30 degrees, the 10-degree mark is going to be right at the first. If you divide that chart by 6, you're going to slice it at 5 degrees, 10 degrees, 15 degrees, and so on. If you slice that chart by 9, like you get my point, okay? So, because if you slice the chart by 9, you're going to cut it at 3 degrees, at 6 degrees, and 9 degrees, So, anyway, so what that means is when somebody has a chart with a lugna rising degree of 10, means that all the charts, again, multiples of 3 are going to be compromised. So unfortunately, the charts I would normally go to determine, you know, career success, half of them I can't use because they're multiples of 3. So I was just sort of laughing. I was like, wow, she's like so Rahuvian. Like, even when I'm trying to dig deeper, instantly, I'm like, like doing a deep dive here to sniff out the details to really kind of, pull together some solid, evidence. It's not happening. And I was just like, this is so Rahu Ketu Eclipsean. So I was like, it just runs through the whole chart, which shouldn't be surprising, since she's, her chart is in the star of Rahu, but it is what it is. So anyway, I'm going to go through the charts, the subcharts that I would normally look at to get more information. But as you'll see, half of them I don't know that we can trust, but we'll see what we can see, just as sort of a learning point here. So as a reminder, these charts are mostly looked at for timing. So as I mentioned, her current Dasha period is Rahu, Venus, Venus. The Summer Olympics of 2028, she will be running Rahu, Moon, Rahu, Jupiter. And the first day of the Olympics is July 14th, 2028. And that's when she's running Rahu, Moon, Rahu, Jupiter. And what's also interesting about that is, even though Jupiter is like this sub period, that's going to give her a little taste of the Jupiter that she's going to be running full into in 2030. The other thing is that, it's not like usually a hard shift, like, okay, one day you're a Rahu and the next day Jupiter. There's like this, at the junction point, there's this shifting, um, energy for usually like a few months on either side. So what's interesting, the Summer Olympics is going to give her a taste of the Rahu, which she's been in, and also a preview of Jupiter. That's important. And then the next Dasha again, Jupiter starts November 2030. So the planets that I circled here, Rahu, Venus, Rahu, Moon, Rahu, Jupiter, and Jupiter. So Rahu, Venus, Moon, and Jupiter. So we can see what those planets are doing. Yeah. Okay. So this first chart is the Navamsha D9. This can be used, it's often used, I would probably say mostly used, to assess spouse and partnerships, but I wasn't interested in that so much. But the Navamsha you can also get for general strength. The other thing is Navamsha, which I don't think is talked about so much, is that the Amsha D9, Navamsha D9, can also be looked at as like person's second half of life. So this could potentially be the energy she's moving into again later on. Okay. Now this chart, the D9 is a multiple of 3. And so I don't know if I can trust it. But let's look and see. So Rahu, which is not surprising. Rahu is in Aquarius, and Rahu in the subchart is considered Swan in its own sign of Aquarius. So she's got a massive Rahu here. Now, the thing is Rahu in the second house in the D9? That I'm not sure about because this D9, if you change it by 1 minute, Rahu will pop up into the Lagna here, which would not surprise me actually. Like, and so, I could see like if you switch Rahu and Mars, over, that'll also bring Jupiter into the 5th house. So she would be doing like some speaking and stuff like that, which would fit with the natal chart. So the other thing is in this chart, there's a parivartam between Mars and Mars and Saturn. So this Rahu is Swa, and then you have Mars there, and then you have this Swa Saturn, and then you have Jupiter. So again, when you get those energies, you get like a ambitious athlete, communicate, is like a news communication person. So again, there you go. And I'm not sure that it matters too much that's in the second house or the first house, but it would make more sense to me if it was in the first house. But, again, I didn't get that deep into it. But at least a Rahu is super strong. Moon is not super strong. Jupiter's not super strong. Venus is strong. It's in its own house. So, and she's running Rahu Venus, so she's running two planets that are swa for her. So there you go. There's some strength. And then when the Olympics rolls around, she's going to be running Rahu still. So there's some strength, but Moon is not strong. Jupiter is not strong. So you can see it's not going to be as strong as what she's currently running. And then with Jupiter, Jupiter's not strong here, and at least in this orientation, which I don't know if it's correct or not, Jupiter's in a negative house. If you give it another minute, though, Jupiter's going to pop up in its fifth house and it'll be in a better position. But um, yeah, so you can kind of see that the energy, at least from the D9 perspective, is kind of degrading over time. Yeah. And again, whether we can truly trust this chart or not, who knows? So then the Shamsha D10, this is the career chart. So based on this, Venus and Moon are not well placed. Venus is Swa in the sixth house, so this will give her this overcoming competitors energy. But Venus and Moon, sixth house of acute injuries, and the 12th house of losses. So again, emotions um, being a liability here in her career is what I'm saying. So same as her, natal chart, really. And then Saturn. Oh, where is it? There's a Parivartana. Yep, there's a Parivartana again between Saturn and Jupiter. When you bring Saturn into the, what is it? When you bring Saturn into Aquarius in the 10th house, which is going to be like her Lugna, it's going to aspect and be debilitated in the 12th house where the moon is. So there's a lot of emotional strain here with her career. And from the 10th house, Saturn is also going to aspect Sun and Mercury, again, the nervous system planets, and another mind planet. So a lot of mental and emotional strain based on her career. Rahu, let's see, Rahu does not seem super strong, except that there's a Parivartana exchange of houses also between Mars and Mercury. When you bring Mercury into its own sign, where Rahu is, that's going to boost up Rahu. So Rahu is strong, Venus is strong, Jupiter is strong, Moon not so much. So yeah, and then again, Jupiter is going to go to the 11th house of clubs, group societies, and it's the, charity, planet and stuff like that. Also finances. So, and speaking, so I think all that kind of stuff's going to be going on for, let me just see what I wrote here. Yeah, so just the two Parivartanas between Mercury and Mars and Saturn and Jupiter. So Mercury and Jupiter are the two communication planets. Mars and Saturn are engineering athletics. So, put that all together for a career: engineering, athletics, media, communications. The other thing that I thought was interesting is that when you get all these Parivartanas going on, you basically recreate the 2-8 axis because look, you have Rahu, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. No, what is it? Rahu, Mars, Mercury, and Jupiter in the third house again, or it's in the second house again. And then you're going to have Rahu. No, sorry. Then you're gonna have Ketu, Mars, and Mercury in the eighth house here. I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. So yeah, I would say public speaking, investing. Now, what was interesting to me is part of what I was potentially looking at with her chart was that I could, I was sort of getting maybe a vibe of her coaching, but I don't think she's gonna go the coaching route because if she was gonna be coaching, um, I would think that I would see the Venus being really important there. Even though teaching can be Jupiter, Venus is the worldly counselor. So especially with something like gymnastic, there's so many like just mundane details, that even though the Venus is strong here, Venus is not in a positive sign. So the other thing is Venus is debilitated in the fifth house of counseling here. The other thing is that what is it? Jupiter is debilitated in the ninth house of teachers. So I don't think she's going to go the teaching route. And then in her main chart, her natal chart, Jupiter's debilitated in the 12th house, even though Jupiter is through Parivartana, Swan, second house. So I think she's going to be a speaker more than a teacher. And then again, in her main natal chart, Venus is combust. So I don't think she's going to go the coaching route or consulting. Yeah, it's more speaking and news, media, that kind of stuff. Then the Ekadamsha D11. Even though this isn't a multiple of 3 chart, I don't know if we can trust it. I put the time range here for this chart, and from 6:01:06, and she was born at 6:02, to 6:07, because again, the higher the number of the chart, the finer slicing and dicing you're getting of each house in the main chart. So it gets like, tighter and tighter as we go here. But I'm not sure we can trust the D11, also because of what I'm seeing in the D11. So why are we looking at the D11 Ekadamsha? Well, D11 represents income, public support, and awards. So ding, 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 ding. I would assume that her, what does it say? Her D11 would be on fire. I mean, she's won so many awards. That was like pages and pages of awards, not just like in gymnastics, but like the president's given her awards and whoever else. So many awards. I would think her D11 would be crazy. But the thing is, look, Rahu is in a negative house with 3 malefics on it. So I was like, wait, what? I was like, seriously? Like, that's her D11? Like, no way. Um, So, and then we've got what is it? Oh, we've got a debility. Oh, this kind of recreates, though. Look, Rahu, Ketu, Mercury, Mars. Where have you seen that before? In the second house, in the main chart. So we've kind of got this combination again, but, Rahu with 2 malefics on it. Mercury's considered, well, actually, it's not a, these would be 3 malefics on Rahu, not strong in a negative house. You would think she would not win anything during Rahu, and that's when she really took off. Um, the other thing is that it's going to be in a Pop Sankhya Yoga because Saturn's across from it, so that's going to bring this whole mess down even more. However, if you change the birth time to 6:01, then this mix here, Rahu, Ketu, Mars, Mercury, pops in the second house, and then Jupiter um, comes down here into the ninth house, where wait a minute. Let me just make sure that's correct before I say 2, 3. Sorry, I'm just confusing myself. Let me try to straighten my head out for a second. I was going to say this may not be true. When you switch this chart up, Rahu is going to come into the second house. Now it's going to be in a positive house. And the thing is, Jupiter's going to drop down into the ninth. No, that's not true. I was going to say you have Jupiter aspecting its own sign, which is not true. So I think it's just a matter of if you give this chart another minute, this Rahu will pop up into the second house here. So, and what else? Venus is not super strong. The thing that was, the sun is strong. The sun is exalted here. The other thing is that sometimes, it's not even a matter of timing with the amshas. Like sometimes some charts just don't work. Like I think my D8 doesn't work. Chronic disease. It's like based on my D8, I would like be constantly sick, and I'm hardly ever sick, knock on wood. So, yeah, this Ekadamsha is sort of mysterious. I don't quite understand it. But it would make more sense if you give it a minute. And so, good lesson here. As in sports, 1 minute in Jyotish can make a huge difference. The other thing is, again, as we're seeing, like, here I'm trying to get clear. I'm trying to, dig deep into this to get more clarity. And you can see there's just, even in this, like, she just has a kind of chart that's very Rahuvian and Eclipsean, where it's like, you don't really know what you're dealing with. You're trying to get clear, and it's just not coming. And she's also not showing her cards, right? She's not revealing her inner self, even in this way. That's just like the energy of her chart and her. So, she, I think, will remain a mystery. I've got a few more charts though, just to see. So again, this is, general second half of life, career and income, awards. I'm trying to find some more information here. So again, we've got the current Dasha period, Summer Olympics 2028, the next Dasha. Now these three were all health, so because that's going to be a big deal. That might be a deciding factor in terms of does she show up for the Olympics or not in 2028. So, and two of the three here are multiples of three. So we have the D6 at the top for acute issues. We have the D8 for chronic issues in the middle, and then we have D27 for strength and resilience at the bottom here. So let's try to get information. I'm trying. The D6 again. I do triple question mark here. I don't know if we can trust this chart, but based on this, she's got Rahu in the sixth house of acute injuries here, which she might have. But I would think, if she's going to be doing all this stuff, she would most likely have Rahu. Well, I guess we'll check the other chart. If we can't check the other charts, but I was going to say we can check the other charts, but you can see like Rahu is in a negative house in the acute issues D6. Rahu's in a negative house in the D8 of chronic issues, which doesn't surprise me. And then in the D27, Rahu is not is okay, is a positive. But again, we don't know if we can trust the D27. But anyway, let me back up here and let's just go through planet by planet. So based on this, if we assume this is correct, the D6, Rahu and Jupiter are not well placed. That means she's going to have acute issues. And again, if she's an athlete, that may just be true. The other thing that's interesting, even if if you spin the chart, one way or another, and maybe, again, give it another minute here, Rahu and Jupiter will be in a better place, but maybe that's simply not true. But the other thing I thought was interesting is Saturn is with the moon, and Saturn is aspecting Venus. So there's going to be, long-term issues with mental, emotional health, I would say. Yeah. And even though this is a acute issues chart, Saturn is a planet of endurance and perseverance. So that's, whatever acute issues that are going on mentally, emotionally, like especially when she was a child. Um, yeah, there's some, yes, I would say some emotional scars here. Um, the other thing, there's two parivartanas, so that'll bring it up. There's a parivartana between Saturn and Jupiter again. And the other one, there's a parivartana between Venus and Mercury. But that doesn't really tell us too much in terms of Rahu. Potentially, Rahu is still negatively placed and nothing's really bringing it up. What this may mean, though, is that in her Jupiter period, again, if she's retiring from gymnastics and then, which seems to be the way things are going, and she's not, jumping and twisting quite so much, she should have less acute injuries, I would think. So that would make sense with this parivartana between Saturn and Jupiter. But again, there's this scarring and emotional suppression going on here. Then the D8. So what's interesting, this is a Virgodama Lugna. That means that this amsha is important because it's the same rising sign as the natal chart. And look, we're kind of recreating again. We've got Rahu, Ketu, Mars, and the 8th house here with the moon. So what I would see here is a lot of chronic pain and inflammation from injuries, physically and mentally, emotionally. So, that makes sense. And then there's the Swa, Sun, and Mercury and Jupiter in the 7th house. What I was seeing here is, again, like sort of a queen leader of communication and news. So again, in a way, you're kind of recreating the natal chart here. But yeah, like a lot of again, when she's still young, and I mean, she's got the best people helping her stay healthy and recover and stuff like that. But usually people who are that active, like, unfortunately, it doesn't really hit them until they're older. And then it's like, the arthritis comes in and all this, and then they get like, joint replacements and stuff because they've just been wearing down their body. So that's the long-term cost of all the success and fame now. Then the Bombsha D27, strength and resilience. So all the grahas are well placed. If this is correct, I don't know if we can trust this, but based on this, there, like in her natal chart, she has the ability to regenerate and bounce back. So what does this mean for the Summer Olympics? Because again, Rahu, Moon, Rahu, Jupiter. Um, if if this D6 is correct, there might be acute injuries that would prevent her from partaking, except that she's running a Rahu now, so that kind of doesn't make sense. So I don't know if we can trust the D6. What about the D8? Um, again, she's running the same thing here. Moon. So there may be more strain on the mind at this time in 2028, July 2028, because now we're getting moon stuff in here. Um, so Rahu, Venus, and the D6 again, if that was correct, would be like more physical injuries and stuff like that. But yeah, it looks like, maybe mentally a little more shaky than where she is now for some reason. Maybe some acute injuries, but there's some recovering energy. So I don't know. Like at the end of the day, I was sort of like, I don't know that this option's really helping that much because I couldn't trust half of them, literally. Um, so yeah, this wasn't, particularly informative. So what did I do next? Let's go into that. Maybe that'll be more clear and bring some more clarity. So then I went and drew up a chart for the first day of the Olympics, 14 July 2028. And what I did was I lined it up so Aquarius was in the Lugna so that we can compare this chart to Simone's chart and see what's transiting for her in July of 2028. Okay. So right now, again, Saturn is in the top and Aquarius giving her strength. But, by 2028, Saturn's going to be debilitated in a negative house with the moon in the chart. So sati sati. So again, we're talking loss of major support system here. And this could specifically mean like a sibling. There could be sibling issues here. The other thing is Saturn is aspecting the fifth house. Now, she doesn't have children right now, but, maybe she'll have kids by then. So, and you can see there's Mars. Look, we're getting the same thing again. Mars, Mercury, Ketu, Sun, exactly the same. It's her natal chart, but instead of the second house now, it's in the fifth house of, like a stage and stuff like that, but also children. So she might have kids then, or she might be thinking of having kids, and that might change her mind in terms of like, does she want to train for another Olympics or maybe start a family? That might be part of what's going on for her and why the like, the moon, because again, she's going to be more in thinking mode, but she's going to be running Rahu moon, so there might be some, emotional concerns here. Um, so let's just go through. So yeah, Saturn's debilitated on third, Sati Sati, and then she's got again, there's going to be a bunch of yogas here. There's a Pravraja yoga again. There's four planet lineup in the fifth house. She's got another Kalasarpa yoga here. Um, so ambition, Subhavashi yoga. So this is the positive or benefic planet 12 on the 12th house from the sun. That's going to bring renown. Malavya Yoga, that's Venus in its own house and a Kendra Trikona. That's going to bring a lot of creative energy. She has a Buddha Ditya Yoga again, so intelligence, and a Saraswati Yoga again, so creativity. The thing though is that again, like, so it looks like, there's some power here, but look again, like I mentioned, when you have Sun very close to Ketu or Rahu, and look, they're within a degree of each other. We're heading into another solar eclipse. Like I was just like, it blew my mind. I'm like, are you serious? Like, how is that even possible? I mean, I guess it makes sense. I mean, but I was like, how, sometimes Jyotish blows my mind, I was like, how is that? She's born in the solar eclipse with this energy here, these four planets in the same house, and then here it is, the Summer Olympics 2020. I mean, that just like, how does that even happen? I don't know. Anyway, the other thing is that because we have Rahu, placements of Rahu and Ketu, you don't get this all the time, but you actually take aspects of Rahu and Ketu in this chart, which means Ketu is projecting its energy 5 and 9 houses away, and Rahu is also. So there's, besides the eclipse energy, which is plenty, and Rahu and Ketu on Mercury, the mind. Now we've got Rahu and Ketu energy all over this chart, and it's just like it's going to be it's going to be a wild Summer Olympics, regardless. I mean, beyond Simone Biles, it's going to be a wild. There's going to be a lot of upsets, a lot of unexpected things, probably weird weather, probably a lot of records broken. You tend to get, just like, again, weird, unusual, bizarre energy. And let's see, the lunar eclipse happened July 6th. So they're starting off the Olympics in the eclipse tunnel. The solar eclipse is happening July 22nd. So we call this the eclipse tunnel between the two eclipses. So in the middle of this is when the Olympics is starting. But the thing is, like, again, if we're like looking at this as like a transit chart for Simone, she has Saturn debilitated in the third house. That means her whole lugna is going to be debilitated. So again, personality, mind, body. And it's specifically in the third house, which can medically can indicate like an arm, shoulder. So she might have generally bad, I don't know, or at least not up to par, physical health, mental emotional strain, especially with Saturn on the moon here. There might be concerns again about siblings or children, for, if she has them by then. And arm stuff. The other thing is that oh, now you're going to have Saturn. Mercury is going to be a malefic planet because you have all these malefics on. You have one, two, three, four malefic planets on Mercury. I mean, that's pretty wild. And you have Mars and Ketu together, again, accidents, injuries. So the fifth house also represents a stage, and the fifth house also represents like performance arts, which is essentially so I could see if she shows up, she may not show up because of injuries. If she shows up, there could be more injuries. The other thing is that this Mars, Mercury, Ketu, Sun bit is all aspecting the 11th house where Rahu's in, which is like an ankle. So if it's not an arm, it might be an ankle. The other thing is that, again, Saturn on Mars, Mercury, Ketu, Sun. Mars and Sun, inflammation. Saturn, Mercury, Sun together. Central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, neuromuscular, skeletal pain. Pain and inflammation here, a ton of it. So if she shows up, she's not going to be in the greatest shape, I would say. And then, so I was actually thinking, if she doesn't show up, what she might do, she might actually show up as a commentator instead of an athlete. The reason being is that, and that might be a better way to go, frankly, from what I'm seeing. So Jupiter's aspecting the Lugna here. Jupiter, again, is a planet of oral communication, news. The other thing is this Mars, Mercury, Ketu, Sun with Saturn bit in the fifth house. This could be like a digital or technological communication, like a broadcast, a broadcast. And so that, I think, again, that may be a better way to go. Because it looks like if she shows up, she's going to get banged up. And again, you could see like Mars and Saturn here. That's going to bring athleticism, Mercury communication, K2 technology, and Sun. is going to be like a leadership type stuff. And the other thing is that her showing up on stage, she's going to be coming in as like the reigning overall leader here from the previous, the Olympics going on now, 2024. So then, because we have this eclipse stuff going on, I just started following the planets because you can see Sun is at 28 degrees 58 minutes. I was like, well, Sun's about to jump here into Cancer, and these are fast moving planets. The other thing is that, like, you know, so Mercury and Moon are so fast they're gonna roll over Ketu. So if you look at day 10, which is day 10 of the Olympics in the summer of 2028 and July 24th, you can see what changes here. So Mercury was potentially protecting this fifth house a bit, but Mercury's moved out of there. Now you just have Saturn, Mars, Ketu in the fifth house. I mean, this is a devastating energy, frankly. I mean, Saturn debilitated. That's, debilitating. Saturn, Mars, Ketu debilitating. The other thing is that Jupiter, which can also not only represent oral communication but optimism, that's also shifted out. I mean, within a few days, because it was, aspecting Lugna. Now it's shifted into the eighth house of psychology. That's like a loss of optimism here. What you do have is you have this parivartana between moon and sun, but where is this, where is this positive energy? Well, the sixth house, so you have Mercury there, you have sun there, moon was there for a few days, and now it's popped into Leo, and now you have a parivartana between sun and moon. So this sixth house, Cancer house, had moon in its own sign protecting it. And now it's almost like you have Mercury, Sun, Moon in there all together again for a few more days. So, and Mercury and Sun, I forget what they're in, but they're in, I think they're in Pusha, which is a emotionally stabilizing energy. And then the Moon zipped through here and went through Ashlesha. Ashlesha is like a symbol of that is a snake, but it's got this like mesmerizing energy, and Moon symbolizes the public. So something here, there was some protection of the sixth house, and that was mesmerizing the public. The sixth house represents competitors. So, I mean, you tell me what this looks like. It looks like the crown is being passed to somebody else. So again, if Simone shows up, it may not go the way she's really hoping it will go. Again, there might be, so, again, she might be better off not going. But if she shows up, there could be not only injuries that are quite important and severe, but then it looks like, the crown will be passed. Um, the other thing is that, since there's kind of good energy in the beginning, again, if she shows up, it may be that, like, because the other thing I didn't know is, like, I didn't know the schedule for the gymnastics events because I don't think it lasts the whole 2 weeks. I don't know. I think it's mostly in the beginning because it's kind of a high, viewing events or something, right? But it might be that, like, because they have initial, like, I think they have the individual, and then at the end they get the overall, right? Isn't that how it works? So she might, like, she might kind of push through in the beginning and win like an individual or event or two. But then I think that overall, because as we're getting, moving along here, looks like there's going to be a sudden upset, surprising upset, and passing the crown along. But let's just look at the second chart here a little bit. So again, Saturn's debilitating in the third house, issues with arm and shoulder, and it's aspecting the fifth house. That's why children's here. Siblings is the third house. It's aspecting Mars and Ketu in the fifth house. This is going to be injuries, or like I would say, like an ending, of the stage platform, like over. Yeah. Then instead of a Shubhavashi yoga where we had Venus on the 12th house of Sun, which boosted up and gave her noun, now look, we've got Mars and Ketu, or Mars at least, creating a Papavashi solar yoga. This is going to bring Sun down. So yeah. So again, it's not looking great in terms of being, president king on the throne. The other thing is that when moon here in this chart on day 10, I want to say is in like, 3, 4. I think it should be in Porto Falguni. So this is like enjoyment. But the first few degrees here when moon entered Mars, uh, sorry, when moon entered Leo, it's in the nakshatra of Maga, which is symbolized by a throne. So again, this is looking like new queen, and then again, if we spin the chart to the sixth house here, where Cancer is in the Lugna, means that if this sixth house is seen as a competitor, then the Lugnatia has gone to the second house of communication, and Ashlesha gives attention, and Maga is like on the throne. This is like again like news about crowning a new queen or king here, a new leader. So what else? Okay, and then Mars aspecting Rahu in the 11th, again, accidents, injuries, especially like ankle, lower leg. Sun transits on August 16th, so day 3. So again, Sun is not in this fifth house very long. The other thing is that in the second chart, we have 4 planets in negative houses out of 9. That's a Balarishta yoga. In a person's chart, that indicates like a start that's very difficult, like in a person's life, like childhood difficulties, and sometimes so difficult children don't survive childhood. There is still the Malavya yoga there, so there's some grace, I would say here, social grace. On day 5, Mercury's crossing Ketu. I mean, that's I think going to be the kind of pulling the plug. That's like an injury to mind, emotions, because Moon is going to be in there as well. So when Mercury crosses K2, that by that time Moon will be in there. And then we have Sun, yeah. So by July 21st, within the first week, Sun, Mercury, and Moon are going to be in the 6th house. And again, that's when they're going to, I think, pass the crown to somebody else. And Jupiter in the 8th house. And so again, Jupiter again represents second house issues of oral communication, and 11th house is clubs, groups, and society. This is like a loss of public, crowd support and attention. I mean, once you don't ascend the podium anymore, the winning podium or platform anymore, it's like, they don't interview. They're like, oh, what happened? Say, oh, well, thanks for showing up. And then they go to the winner, and give them all the attention. That's how it goes. Then, so what I was seeing from all this is that things will go unexpectedly sour very quickly. And again, I would want to know what I couldn't find the gymnastic schedule, but especially if it's all up front, there might be some initial like individual events one, but I don't think the overall is going to go to her. The other thing though is that when you have this mix here, so on day 9, so between day 7, when Mercury, Sun, Moon are in the 6th house of competitors, Jupiter will still be in the 7th house, and you give it another day or two, and Moon will be there. You'll be a Parivartana. Then you'll have Sun, Moon, and Jupiter in the 7th house. So Sun, father, Moon, mother, Jupiter, child, in the 7th house of partnership. So, if she doesn't have children at this point, I think that might be her next, again, 7th house independent business, so to speak. Partnerships. I think, she decides to go for another one here. And she may actually decide, once things are over here, looks like she might decide to launch a business. Because again, the Sun is in a Parivartana here, and then very soon Sun is going to move into Leo. So once Sun moves into Leo, uh, that's going to be more, vitality, energy towards partnerships, personal and professional. So in the end, she may show up for the Olympics 2028. I think perhaps not in great shape. I think it'd be better potentially for her to show up as a commentator, which is a possibility here. But again, I think if she shows up, it may not go as well as she would hope. It's like a final, last hurrah, so to speak. So anyway, that's what I saw with Simone Biles and potentially a little bit of her future. All right, so as always, thanks for stopping by, listening to one of my talks. All of my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are my concepts playlist. They can be found there. For other famous birth charts, famous people, famous places, and famous moments in time, you could look at my birth charts archive list 2024 video where I list all the famous charts I've analyzed on the channel in the video you can find them in. Most of them are not one-off videos like this, so you wouldn't necessarily know where they are. I do offer individual birth chart readings, live on Zoom or as a recorded video. And you can email heartlightask@yahoo.com for more info on that if that's interesting to you. I do have another YouTube channel on natural medicine, which covers other Vedic arts such as Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, yoga, and other paradigms of medicine like homeopathy and naturopathic medicine. The name of that channel is Nature Source Care, so that's out there too. Thanks again for all your support of my work in the channel and all the different ways that you guys do that. Subscribing, liking, commenting, sending in donations, all of it, watching videos. So it's all great and it's much appreciated. And as always, I hope you found this talk interesting, helpful, and useful to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right. So until the next one, take care. Namaste.